called Tibor. I was born 93 years ago in a small town in Hungary. Population 13,000, amongst them 1,150 Jews. Those days, being a Jew was simply a religion. This was my family. My father fought in the First World War. He was wounded, he was decorated, and later he became one of the executives of the Veterans Organization. He had a Bakanov store. He wasn't too religious, so he sent me to a nursery school run by nuns. My first prayers were Catholic prayers. Then for 4 years I went to a Jewish school. High school again was a Catholic high school. Those days, religion was compulsory, and the solution was simple. Twice a week, Reverend Rabbi priest came, we went to separate classrooms, now later we were together again. But, 1933, Hitler came to power. Both the Austro-Hungarian Empire and Germany lost the First World War. The German economy was completely destroyed, and Hungary lost 2/3 of its territories. So when Hitler came to power, he promised them, "I get it back for you," so they allied themselves to him. Then Hitler started to push, do something about the Jews, do something about the Jews. At the beginning, the government was reluctant because the Jews were important in the economy. But by 1938, the first anti-Jewish law came and followed every year. At the beginning, every Jewish employee by government were fired. Then larger Jewish companies had to have a non-Jewish partner. Later on, it became that Jewish merchants didn't get any merchandise controlled by the government in Hungary. Was salt, sugar, oil, tobacco, alcohol. Anyway, but by then the Second War started, and there was nowhere to go. We just tried to anyway, in 1939, the First War, the Second World War started. Hitler defeated the Polish army in 9 days. He occupied Poland. Then he gave half of Poland to Stalin to keep him in peace. That was in 1939. 1941, he invaded the Soviet Union. Everybody thought he didn't know history, didn't know what happened to Napoleon. Yes, he knew history. Except by then they had no food, they had no gasoline, and Ukraine was the largest wheat growing country, and the Soviet Union had a lot of oil. At the beginning, he was again victorious. He went as far as 35 kilometers from Moscow. But then the Russian winter came, the tanks wouldn't move anymore, and everything changed by 1942. In 1941, when they started the war, the Hungarian government felt compliant to help him, called up everybody from 20 to 42, including the Jewish men. But by then, they didn't trust the Jews. Wouldn't give them a uniform or a rifle. All they had is a yellow armband. And they were used clearing forests, repairing roads, and clearing minefields without any equipment. So by the end of the war, 75% of these Jewish men were dead. As I said, toward the end of 1942, the tide changed. The German army was withdrawing, and the Hungarians felt, let's get out of it. Tried to sue for peace. The Germans found out. They invaded Hungary. The last country they invaded, which was March 19, 1944. First thing, every Jew had to put on a yellow star. We had a curfew from 5 p.m. to 8 a.m. They confiscated radios, telephones, vehicles. We had no cars yet. But that didn't last long. One Sunday morning, a Hungarian gendarme and a German soldier came, packed what you can carry, and gave us 30 minutes. Then they took us to a yard of the Jewish school. We slept outside. They confiscated our jewelry, including watches. And then, the following morning, they took us to a larger town, about 10 kilometers away. By then, they established a ghetto there. They simply pushed out the population for the first fight of the town, about 2,500, fenced in that part, and they pushed in 12,500 Jews. They could do it because we had no furniture. We had some straws and some blankets. And that was our ghetto. It was patrolled by the Hungarian gendarme. Very few German soldiers were there. That didn't last long either. Again, Hungarian gendarme, German soldier came, pick up your belongings, and took us to a railroad siding. Engine. And cattle cars. They pushed in 80, 90 persons. And they loaded the cattle cars, and the train started and stopped and started. Anytime another train came, they just pushed us aside. Just trip, rested around 3 days. We didn't know because it was dark all the time in the cattle cars. Finally, it stopped at night. It was quiet until daybreak. Then they opened the cattle cars, and we faced German soldiers with dogs screaming, "Go slow," which means fast, fast. Get out, leave your belongings there, we are going to take it after you by trucks. It was a long platform. We didn't know where we were. Anyway, they separated the men from the women, children, older people, weak-looking people. And 5 abreast, we were going to end of this platform. End of the platform, a few SS officers, one in a white coat. When you got there, he looked at you and waved right, left, right, left. We had no idea where we were, we had no idea what's going on. The place where we got, it was Auschwitz. And that thing was a selection. He simply looked at you. If you thought you can work, he sent you on one side. Everybody else, children, old people, even young women with babies in their arms, were sent to the other side. They were told, "You are dirty, you have to take a shower." And they took them to a large building, bathhouse. Get undressed, make sure you know where you put your clothes, and they push them into the shower room. But instead of water, gas came. They were killed that morning. I found out only after the end of the war from some survivors, because my sister was only 13 years old, sent her to the wrong side, and my mother spoke fluent German. "Can I go with her?" He said yes. They were killed that morning and burned in a crematorium that night. My father and I were sent to the working side. They had to get undressed, we all were naked. They shaved us from top to bottom. Toward the end of the day, we got this striped uniform. We slept outside. The first food we got was the following noon. It was a big bowl of watery vegetable soup. Bowl for 6 men. But they wouldn't give us a spoon. Because they said the Jews are no better than dogs. If you want to eat like dogs. When we were hungry enough, we did. And during my incarceration, I often wished they would treat me as well as they treat their dogs, but they did not. I didn't stay long in Auschwitz because they were looking for tradesmen. So after high school, as a Jew, I couldn't go to university. I learned the trade. I became an electrician. My father said, maybe they treat you a little bit better. So I reported. Grabbed me. Again, a train was waiting. Cattle cars pushed me in. And a few hours later, I arrived to Warsaw, the capital of Poland. Now I have to go back a little bit. When the Germans occupied Poland, they started to put the Jews into ghettos. Warsaw had the largest ghetto, between 350 to 400,000 people. The situation was, there was no water, there was no they pushed in 8-10 people per room. And people started dying. They were full with lice, typhus, all sorts of sicknesses. But the worst thing was starvation. Officially, they were supposed to get 800 calories, but they never got it. So by 1943, only about 50,000 left out of 350,000. There was an uprising. They had a few pistols, some. The main weapon was something like this. A bottle filled with gasoline, a wick on the top, and they threw it against the Germans. It took 3 weeks until the Germans, by destroying most of the buildings, managed to quell the uprising. So everything was destroyed. So they established after a concentration camp to clear the rubble. Simply clean the bricks, pile them up, and sell it as cheap building material. So their variety was to work there. But didn't last long, because by then the Soviet army was closing in, so they didn't want us to be freed. They started the first death march. Chronologically, that was the first one. We started out 5,900 of us, and 2,000 of us arrived at Dachau. I don't know if you ever heard of Dachau. Dachau was the very first concentration camp Hitler established. The minute he came to power, he put everybody he thought against his regime. Naturally started with communists, socialists, unionists, habitual criminals, Jews, gypsies, homosexuals, anybody he didn't like. But that was in 1933. By 1944, when we got there, Dachau became a sort of center of the German economy, because every German man was in the army, navy, or the air force. The whole German economy was based on 3.5 million of Soviet POWs and inmates of concentration camps. So I was sent from there to a small camp, which was established for one purpose: to build a a factory for missiles and jet planes. By then they know something about jet planes. I call it Hitler's latest folly because it would have taken at least 3-4 more years to finish this. It was the size of 3 football fields, 7 stories high. And by then, 1944, everybody knew that the Germans are losing the war, except maybe Hitler and his gang. Our job was to carry the bags of cement, 50 kilo, up to the machines, but if you slip on the ramp, you weren't allowed to go out. We worked there 12 hours, 6.5 days. Give you an idea about this camp. Wake up call 4:15. Then they give us a half a liter what they call coffee. Naturally, never saw any coffee beans. For lunch, we got a half a liter of soup. For supper, we got a whole liter of soup. Always the same orderly thing. Then they give us a piece of bread. At the beginning, it was a good size, but as the German supplies the British, so we saw bread. Ended up with 200 grams, including some mouse droppings, some sawdust, but it was still bread. By then, we got our own bowl. It's an ordinary metal bowl, but I don't know if you can see it. There's a piece of wire on it because I called it lifeline. If you lost it, you had to wait until somebody else finished it. So most of the time, nothing left. So we kept it on our bed during the day and under our head at night. By then I have to tell you, we got a spoon. Because the Germans realized we can eat much faster with a spoon. After supper, we had a roll call. We stood there, the dead bodies were at the front, and the SS came around, and if you didn't look strong enough, pulled you up. There was always a truck waiting. They took you away to a larger camp where they killed you, and the same truck brought fresh people. When I was in Dachau a couple of years ago, it seems over 3,000 people out of the 7,000 died within a year. This camp had no water, so we didn't wash. Which meant pretty soon we were full with lice. So they tried to disinfect us, but it didn't work anything because we had the same clothing. By the way, the striped uniform I got in Auschwitz, I slept in it, I worked in it, I was liberated in it. I changed my shirt maybe 3 times during the year. Pairs of shoes, we had some wooden cloths, but that's how it was. And the Germans told us, whatever happens, you don't get out of here alive. Pretty soon, we were all walking skeletons. I saw that picture, actually. What are you doing this is? No, that was the bathroom. Right. That was our bathroom. In the summer it wasn't too bad, but in the winter it was rough. One day, they brought us back from work during the day. By the way, the camp was about 3 kilometers away from our workplace. And again, the railway was waiting for us. They pushed us in. By then, 100 because, we were quite slim. Crossed cattle cars, and the train started to go east. Then it stopped, came back, didn't know what was going on. Well, what actually happened is that was toward the end of the war, and the Germans wanted to keep their words that no Jew will remain alive. They were supposed to push this train into an abandoned mine. All they have to do is blow up the entrance, and very efficient, cheap way of killing 7,000 Jews. But luckily the Soviet army got there first, so the train started to retreat, because by then the guards felt if they will be prisoners of war, they wanted to be prisoners of the US Army instead of the Soviet Army, because the treatment would have been quite different. Then, one day, still standing in the middle of nowhere, we realized we had no more guards. So we managed to open the cattle cars. We saw the first US trucks, US Army was passing by. They looked at us, and but they didn't stop, because that's not me, but that's the way I look too. We were dirty, full with lice, full with boils due to vitamin deficiency, and they threw us some small cans, opened one. It was some sort of an emergency ratio for them. It was a few crackers, small piece of cheese. There was some yellow powder, tasted, burnt my tongue, so I threw it out. I found out it was powder to make lemonade. Then was something else, which looked like a Band-Aid. I threw that out too. Found out much later that would have been my first encounter with Western civilization. It was chewing gum. That evening, special troops came and took us into an abandoned Hitlerjugend campus. They opened their dining room and they served supper. I realized for the first time in a year, I was sitting on a chair. I had a table in front of me, plate, and they gave us food, which was white bread and team of meat. So naturally we moved it down, went for a second portion, some of us even had a third portion, but they didn't realize, neither did we, it was too rich for our stomach. 300 of us died. I was in bed for about 8 or 9 days, but I survived. This became a DP camp, a displaced person camp, because the war was over, but they didn't know what to do with us. Now, were liberated earlier, especially those in Poland. Auschwitz was liberated January 27th of 1945. So anybody who survived, what's the logical thing? Let's try to get back home and find out who else survived from the family. There was no transportation. It took anywhere from 2 to 4, sometimes 5 months to get back to your hometown. Finally, when you manage to get back, try to get into your home, another family was there. You see, Hitler promised no Jew will come back, so the Hungarian government gave away our homes to people who find a better job out there. So I hated perpetrators for what they did to us. And I hated the rest of the world what they did not do for us. You see, in 1938, Roosevelt, President of the United States, called a conference in Evian in France. 32 countries and the Vatican were invited. And the question was, Hitler doesn't want Jews in Germany. How many are you going to take in? It was a resounding silence. Not United States, not Canada, not any of the South American countries. Nobody wanted the Jews. So when Hitler realized this, he said, then I have another solution, which he called the final solution. I'm going to kill them all. But he managed 6 million anyway. But as time went by, I realized that hate is hate. I also realized that surviving the Holocaust was a kind of gift. A gift which came with 2 obligations. One, ensure the continuity of the Jewish people. Second, let me go back a little bit. I didn't like the situation in Hungary because it was under the communist system. Told my father, let's get out of it. He says, too weak, too old, I can't start a new life. So I stayed with him until he remarried, and then I said goodbye, went back to Germany to a deep weekend, and I tried to get out of Europe. I went to different consulates. Can I have a visa? What are you? I said, I'm a Jew. We have no quota for Jews. Where were you born? I was born in Hungary. Then go back and apply as an Hungarian. I said, so once they threw me out, then I escaped. I can't do it. So it took me 3 years until finally the Canadian government changed its mind. Because the motto was, none is too many. They didn't want any Jews here. But as I say, the government changed its mind and let 1,000 youngsters in. Since then, Canada has changed completely. They let in all sorts of refugees, so the situation is much different now. So I managed to come to Canada in 1948 and ended up in Montreal. By 1954, I got married. I have 2 children, 6 grandchildren, and 2 brand new great-grandchildren. So that part, to ensure the continuity of the Jewish people, was completed. My other obligation was to make sure that the world does not forget the Holocaust. So the past 30-some-odd years, I'm going to schools. I went on the march, I believe, 15 times, and that's why I'm here today talking to you.